Hello, my name is Dr. Reed Tuckson, and I am a co-founder of the Black Coalition Against COVID, which is a grassroots DC initiative and a national coalition comprised of our 4 Black medical schools, Howard, Meharry, Morehouse, and Drew, the National Medical Association, the National Black Nurses Association, the National Urban League, and our partners producing this show tonight, blackdoctor.org. On behalf of my colleagues at the Ad Council, the COVID Collaborative, the Joy Collective, Choose Healthy Life, and NFL Alumni Health, we are all so excited to welcome you to our end-of-year town hall that we are calling Real Conversations on Protecting People Against COVID-19. So let's get right to it. We've learned that sometimes it's not just about the facts that determine how we make decisions, but also our fears. Our emotions can be determinant in how we interpret and act on facts and medical guidance. So let's begin our conversation tonight with our first short video from the Ad Council's new public service announcement series that they call Do It For Me. Let's take a look.
Because I care. I want you to be safe. If you was to die, man, that would literally kill me, man. If it made you feel that way, bro, I would probably do. I love you, man. I love you too.
Well, let me bring into the studio, I think if they are here yet. Do we have Amir, Akeem, and Wesley yet here? The featured brothers in that video? If not, then Dr. Pernell, one of the things that I noticed about that short video is the sense that this conversation between 2 brothers, oh, and here they are now. And so I do see Akeem is here. Akeem is here and his brother will be joining shortly. But Akeem, I noticed there this sense of emotion between you and your brother. At the point in which that was filmed, as I understand, your brother was not vaccinated, and it was clearly important to you that he become so. Why were you so adamant and so emotional about that?
He had his own reasonings, several reasons that he had that, it wasn't FDA approved at the time. And a lot of people were getting sick from taking the vaccine. And so, but the percentage between people dying from COVID and people getting sick from the vaccine is drastically different. But he was just so caught up in not FDA approved. But then on the news channel, I saw somebody who had COVID and he was begging the doctor to give me the vaccine. And the doctor says, I can't cure it. It's not a cure, it's a preventative. But you already have COVID, so there's nothing I can do. And so that was what really impacted me. It's like, that scared me a little bit. I wanted to get my brother to go get his vaccine.
How hard, and let's just be real, because that's what tonight is. It's a conversation about being for real. Black men have a hard time with emotions, and especially expressing love to other Black men. How difficult was it for you to have that conversation and to be that transparent about how much you cared about your brother and how much it would hurt you if you lost him?
It was hard. It was definitely hard because he was making valid points that I could hardly argue. Who could, if it's not FDA approved, that's a realistic fear. Like, that's a realistic saying, I don't know what's in it. And but I was past all that, people dying and stuff like that. I was past, like, look, man, you gotta be safe because you can get it and you end up in the hospital and be in the same situation as that other guy was. And that guy was healthy. There was nothing wrong with him, but he got COVID and things went the other way, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, let me ask Dr. Pernell, now that things are approved, are there reasons that anyone would have to be concerned today about whether or not these vaccines are not only effective, as we are hearing from Akeem, but also safe?
Thanks for that question. First off, let me just say, Akeem, I salute you and I thank you for your courage, because it takes courage to speak from a place of vulnerability. And your story resonates with me because I lost my dad. I lost my dad in this pandemic, and my sister is a long COVID survivor, and I've lost 2 cousins. And I frequently had conversations with other family members or other people in community about, I don't want my story to be your story. Right. And so helping people to understand just how enormous the amount of data that we have to prove and to argue conclusively that these vaccines, which are available in the United States, are not only safe, but effective. So Dr. Tuckson, to your point, there is no identifiable patient population that you would say you should not get vaccinated. There even is debate now among those who have a known allergy to ingredients. Should those persons be vaccinated under close guidance of a physician in observation, or should they refrain from vaccination at all? So outside of that debate, and outside of someone who has a known allergy to ingredients in the vaccine, or had anaphylaxis or allergic reaction to, let's say, the first dose in the series, those would be the only people. Otherwise, if you have high blood pressure, if you have diabetes, you should get vaccinated. If you have asthma, if you're struggling with overweight and obesity, you should get vaccinated. If you are breastfeeding, you should get vaccinated. If you are a person who is pregnant or considering getting pregnant in the future, you should get vaccinated.
Perfect. So Akeem, how did your brother, it's like, what happened off camera when the cameras turned off, and here you are putting your heart on your sleeve right there in front of, by the way, who's the older brother?
I'm the oldest brother.
Okay. So you put you always have to, I'm an older brother, and I'll tell you, with my brother, I got to take the lead,
Yeah.
He's going to kill me for saying this out loud. And he's bigger than me too. So, but Akeem, how did he react off when the cameras were turned off after the hug? What was your conversation about?
First and foremost, I want to say to Dr. Pernell, I'm so sorry for your loss. My brother couldn't believe that I cried. He's like, whoa, like, you took it that far? I'm like, man, it's real for me. Like, a lot of people go because they're in front of the camera and it's fake. That conversation between me and my brother was real. Like, I was feeling that way. There was no, someone didn't spray anything in my eyes and told me, okay, there's tears. No, I really felt that, and the director asked me, what's your greatest fear? And that was it, losing my brother. And so I turned to him and I told him what my deepest fear was. It's like, man, you my other half, man. Like, me and my brother are close. Like, we shared everything, shoes, clothes, bed. That's how it was. We didn't have the luxury of our own room. We didn't have that.
Where'd y'all grow up, man?
Huh?
Where'd y'all grow up?
We grew up in LA, Los Angeles, and single family. Mom, mom did everything, worked 3 jobs, and went to school. And so she's the epitome of hard work.
Is she still with you?
Oh yeah, we're gonna see her in a few weeks. Go out there to San Jose.
What was her reaction to all of this, and what was her reaction to you being vaccinated, but your brother not?
Our whole family cried when they saw it. My mom didn't know I was doing that, so when it came on TV, she was surprised, like how my entire family was surprised, and she cried. It was like she called me right away. Is that real? I'm like, yeah, that's real, Mom. Like, I want you to get the vaccine. My mom ended up getting it. My whole family was affected by it. My cousins ended up getting the vaccine because they thought I was acting. And I was like, no.
Wow. Dr. Pernell, one of the things that Akeem said that influenced him, and I wonder what your reaction is that there are people, and we hear stories of this every day, of people in the hospital on oxygen, deathly ill, and then saying, okay, can I get the vaccine now? What do you think about that? And how often do you hear those stories?
Doc, it's heartbreaking. right? It's really heartbreaking for me because we in public health, we in medicine more broadly, we have to become more expert at the lived experience and communicating to people in language that they can understand, with stories and narratives, elevating the stories of people who look like the communities that we serve and that we come from. And so that's my first reaction. It's heartbreaking, but it's also frustrating because there's a fair amount of misinformation out there, and people have legitimate, let me emphasize this, legitimate and valid fears and concerns, okay? On top of those legitimate and valid fears and concerns, you then have this misinformation, a little bit of truth mixed up with some things that are not true. So people aren't sure. And so that complicates the decision journey. So as much as we can, we have to speak in direct, plain spoken terms so people know what they're facing. And I can tell you, when I got vaccinated because I was enrolled in a trial. And when I made the decision to enroll in a Moderna COVID-19 vaccine trial at the time, my family's first question is, why? You don't need to do this. We just lost our dad. My oldest sister is a breast cancer survivor and had long COVID. She was struggling to go about her day to day. So I think being able to elevate those stories and to help people understand the why, help people understand the why of get vaccinated, we have to do a better job around. And yes, I do, unfortunately. I hear from patients, I hear from people in community who wish they had made a different choice. But even elevating that story can interrupt that possibility for someone else.
Akeem, one of the things that you said early on in your conversation with us was that back in the early days before the FDA approval, getting the authorizations and so forth, and some people not fully understanding that this vaccine was safe and effective. And by the way, I see now that Dr. Duke is with us, and we'll join her in the conversation in a moment. But Akeem, now that we know that there are all of these facts that prove safety and effectiveness and so forth, but there's still a lot of misinformation out there in the land. Do you, in terms of as you travel around in your social circuit, do you find that there is still a lot of misinformation being spread? And does that have a significant impact on the decisions of people in your social circuit about whether that they will become vaccinated or not?
Oh, misinformation is deadly, because you can lose your life over misinformation. I mean, they're saying that some of the vaccines, you put it in your arm, it has that little metal thing or some kind of magnet that if you put your spoon to it, it'll stick to your arm. There's stories about that. There's stories about all the vaccines making you have blood clot. There's information about the droopy lips, the lips going to the side like that. There's so many stories out there, and so it spooks people, and it's crazy. Not a lot of people do their research. What it is people listening to other people, or people listening to the media, the news, or something. They'll see something, instead of going like, oh, let me go research that and see if it's true. They'll take it, run with it, and then when their life's in jeopardy, then it's like, okay, all that stuff's out the window, give me the shot. But it's too late, so it don't work.
Wow.
And
Dr. Duke, Dr. Duke,
sorry.
This issue of misinformation that Akeem describes is unfortunately so prevalent in our community. What's your reaction to that when you hear this kind of information? Oh, take yourself off mute and we'll be good.
I really agree with Akeem that misinformation kills. And in fact, especially in our communities, we're seeing large numbers of people succumbing to COVID-19 when they could have otherwise prevented a lot of these bad outcomes if only they had the right information. So I'm glad that you highlighted some of those myths, Akeem, because indeed, there are no magnets, there are no chips, no tracking chips in any of the vaccines. There are no special things meant to cause infertility or meant to cause children not to learn well growing up. I think there's a list that's circulating, for example, of supposed ingredients in the vaccine. And those, of course, are not true. So, these so-called poisons are not in the vaccines. And we absolutely would not be here talking about vaccines if we thought there were ingredients in there that were not compatible with safe human existence. And I think it's important for people to understand that. I think when we talk about doing research, that's where also a lot of people are coming up in the misinformation circle without knowing they're in a misinformation circle, because they do believe they were doing their research. But of course, when we talk about doing research, we're talking about using credible sources. And that, of course, has been part of the issue. Is historically our credible sources that we tell the community about would be the CDC, the NIH, and other vetted, trusted organizations. But there's been an active misinformation campaign to undermine confidence in those very much vetted organizations, the WHO, the World Health Organization. So part of the conversation is first debunking some of the myths, debunking the myths that say the CDC is giving inaccurate information, explaining that this pandemic has been rapidly progressing. And so we've been gaining new information. So what we may have told you about the pandemic in March of 2020 and what are your safety steps that you need to take may have evolved over time, but they were not lies to you by these organizations.
That is such an important point. One of the things you see in the news is people attacking Dr. Fauci because the things that he is being able to talk about today may be slightly different than the very early days. So that's because you learn, you grow. That's what scientists do. And you, as an expert in virus diseases, when the comments that you make have great weight. Well, Akeem, we owe you, my brother, a debt of gratitude because, as I mentioned in the setup to this section of our show, sometimes it's about facts, but sometimes it's about emotions. It's about fear. A lot of things come into the complicated calculus of how we make decisions and choices. You have allowed us to see a strong, proud Black man who is not afraid to be vulnerable, who's not afraid to shed a tear when it comes to his love for his brother. And I would have to imagine, Akeem, that love extends beyond just your own immediate family to Black folk in general and all people in general. And so I think you've given us permission to say to each other during this holiday season, I care about you. I know I'm going to call my brother tonight, and I'm going to take the opportunity because nothing is guaranteed for us. And I'm going to call my brother tonight and tell him I love you. And I think that's something that, it's kind of, I'm going to do it. Akeem, you have taught me something about Black manhood that we needed to hear. Thank you, my brother. And we appreciate it. Tell your brother, by the way, your brother is now vaccinated.
Yeah, my brother's now vaccinated and he's happy that he did because some of his coworkers had got the COVID-19 and, they're struggling with that right now. So he's like happy that he got it.
Hey, man, thanks for joining us and take good care.
Thank you guys so much. I appreciate the opportunity.